I'm Alicia.
And I'm Liam. We both have OCD. And instead of spiraling alone, we decided to turn our symptoms into a podcast. You're welcome.
Here, we overshare real stories, laugh through the anxiety, and talk to actual experts who can explain why your brain keeps asking, what if I accidentally marry my cousin?
Whether your thing is hand washing, mental rituals, or just silently panicking during normal conversations, congrats. You have found your people.
This is a safe place, unless you're an intrusive thought, in which case, get in line, buddy. We're booked.
So grab a weighted blanket, cancel your plans for the 5th time, and let's dive in. This is the OCD Confessional.
And yes, we did check this recording 4 times before uploading it. Today on the OCD Confessional, we're joined by Chrissie Hodges, OCD advocate, writer, and founder of OCD Gamechangers. Chrissie has been incredibly open about her experience with OCD, including navigating some of the most misunderstood and taboo intrusive thoughts, the kind many people are afraid to say out loud. We're so grateful to have Chrissie with us today. Let's get into it.
Hello.
Hi there, Chrissie.
Yay, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear us okay?
Okay, good. Yes, we're good.
We tend to like to start with a confession of some kind, like your OCD confession, something that you
Like
did.
a compulsion?
Yeah, something you used to do that people might be like, oh, wow, that's
We're
interesting.
going to lighten the mood. It can be as ridiculous as you feel comfortable sharing, whatever it is.
I mean, I would say the first thing that came to mind is most of my OCD experience before I was diagnosed and treated was religious scrupulosity and sexual orientation OCD, of course, peppered with all the taboo themes like incest and bestiality and all that. But mostly it was sexual orientation OCD. And, one of probably the more disturbing symptoms of any sort of sexual intrusive thoughts is going to be the groinal or arousal nonconcordance. Probably the strangest things I would do, I would get around my friends in high school, and of course, I would be having intrusive thoughts about them or intrusive images and urges of like, oh my God, what if you lose control and, grab them and kiss them or grab their leg or whatever and stuff like that. Or I would just have these horrid images while I was around them. But yeah, it probably doesn't seem strange, but at the time, the only thing I knew was when I was around them, I'd sit on my hands. And it just as a precaution that I might lose control of my hands and, take them to the ground and make out with them or something. Like I would do that. But that's what OCD would tell me that you might do. So you better take the precaution to protect your friends from this unwanted desire.
I want to back up a little bit. So, Chrissie, first of all, thank you so much for being here. Our audience knows you from your writing, your honesty, and your work with OCD Gamechangers. So
Yeah.
You just gave us a little bit of insight, but let's start with how OCD entered your life. What was your first experience that you can remember?
My life, I've always had OCD, even before kind of the big one hit, which is what I like to refer to it as, where it completely took over my life. I was afraid of people breaking in the house at night. So I would do these weird, quirky compulsions of checking all the locks and so it was always there, but it just, all that did was slap a label of the anxious child onto me. And it seemed quirky and, oh, look how cute. Our 6-year-old wants to keep the house safe. Little did they know I was up sometimes until 1 a.m. worried about it. But when I was in 3rd grade, I was sitting in class and I had a kid come. I heard something, commotion going on in the back. And all of a sudden I heard the teacher go, hurry up. I don't want to say his name. Hurry up, son, whatever. But he comes running up and he stops and throws up right by my desk. And I had an extreme reaction to this. I mean, people had thrown up in the classroom all the time. I'd thrown up, my family members had thrown up. But this time, I shot out of my chair into the guy next to me's lap and he shoved me onto the floor and I am just paralyzed with panic. And once I realized that some of the kids were kind of hovered over me and started snickering at me, because I couldn't move and I couldn't get up, that's when I thought, you got to do whatever you do, you got to get out of this situation. So I started doing breathing rituals, like counting, and that at least kind of, now what I know is just self-regulating. And the teacher got me up, took me to the back, and I'm just at 8 years old going, what just happened? What, but I'm still filled with terror. And in my brain, I'm doing this, this mental, gymnastics of why did this happen to me? And the only thing I could think was, because I grew up in a religious household, my dad is a Southern minister. And so our whole life was religion. I just thought I must have done something to make God angry. And so that was when the religious scrupulosity started. And it became everything about my world. And so that's when the prayer ritual started, the mental review of possible sins, things that I could have done. I'm repenting for everything under the sun that isn't even a sin, or maybe wasn't, but I was just so scared because I thought that the bad feelings towards the throwing up was punishment. So it then very much became this, I need to be this person in order to not get punished. And it's worth noting too that I knew at a young age to not share this with my parents. As an older adult now, in reflection, it's because I would not have been taken seriously. It would not have been validated. It would have been, it just would have been pray more, or
Right.
strengthen your relationship with Jesus, and this might go away. But then it was, I feel too much shame. What if they knew that God was actually punishing me? I mean, it's as far-fetched as it sounds, it's the only worldview I had as an 8-year-old. And so it makes sense that I would bring that in to try to explain something that logic wasn't obviously helping with. So that was my first kind of break with OCD, and it took over everything from then on.
My gosh. Yeah. It's amazing how our brains try to just make sense of it. But little do we know we're piling on more right? It just becomes this vicious cycle of torment in our brains. When did you finally open up to someone, and what did that look like?
This was at age 8. So every part of my life became compulsive. And as we all know, you don't know you're doing compulsions. You believe that whatever you're doing is eventually going to solve some problem. Now, the difference with emetophobia, and I'm not saying that there are differences among the themes, although I am saying that there are differences among the themes, and I don't give a shit what anybody says. There are different nuances to them. You approach it compulsively different. You have a different degree of shame. But with emetophobia, the difference in between that and the other themes that I developed later down the line, which were more sexual or harm in nature, is that the possibility of emetophobe or of someone vomiting or myself vomiting is absolutely there every day. The possibility that I'm going to just, decide today that, maybe I'm gay, or maybe I'm asexual, or maybe I'm going to molest a child today. That's not, from an OCD lens, we know that that's not logical. That's not going to happen. It's just the torment of the idea that maybe this is, and I don't know it. With emetophobia, absolutely, I'm going to school 3rd grade during the neurovirus, and someone could projectile vomit everywhere. So the difference is I'm doing compulsions to try to prevent that from happening. So there are prayer compulsions. There's, repentance all over the place. I have to be this perfect person, or God is going to punish me. I mean, it definitely is this, I am a bad person and might get punished. So how can I be the best person so this doesn't happen? In hindsight, I have so much compassion for that little girl. I mean, the idea that I lived that for, I still do. I still have emetophobia. I don't have religious scrupulosity, but that I had to live that way as I've done something wrong and continue to monitor that. That's just, it's terrible that I had to go through that. But eventually, once I started developing hormonally and all of that, that's when the sexual intrusive thoughts started creeping in. So there was, bestiality, intrusive thoughts about my animals, some pedophilia thoughts, which was interesting that one didn't stick. But it was the sexual orientation that when I was 14 years old, I was hanging out with one of my girlfriends and was going to spend the night at her house. And, I was boy crazy. And at that point, and, just loving life as a teenager, I was in high school and had been dating this guy, and we started talking, and she started talking about sex. Well, from a religious scrupulosity standpoint, that was off limits. if I talk about sex, I'm going to be punished. And, this is bad. So I remember having that conversation with her and going, but I also want to be cool and talk about sex too, even though I had no idea what sex was really at that age. And so tell me more. So she's telling me that she's had sex before. And I'm like, what the fuck? You've had sex? I can't even think about the word sex and I'm getting punished, and I all of a sudden had this, how it is with OCD, this rise of insight. Something is off here. If everybody else in the world gets to do what they want and I can't, I thought I should tell someone. And it's almost like OCD came in and said, oh, no, you're not telling anyone because watch this. And I went to bed that night and I was so angry and I actually was allowing myself to have emotions, which I never really did. And that's when my brain I started thinking about sex, why other people can have it. And then boom, there was this image of my friend having sex with her boyfriend in my head. And I, of course I thought, ew, and that does not turn me on. Please, let's not think about that. But the more, you resist, it persists. And so it kept popping up. And then all of a sudden it was no longer her and her boyfriend. It was just an image of her. And I, of course, went, why am I thinking about her? And then it was like this, someone lit this slow flame up my spine and then it hit my head. Well, maybe you're gay. And I just went down on my knees. I remember because it felt just like the emetophobia did that moment it hit. And I just thought, oh my God. And then I thought, am I? No, I'm not. And then this is in like 1994 in the South. And I literally was like, this was before the Seinfeld quote. I was like, not that there's anything wrong with it. Right. I just knew I wasn't. I knew. And there was this connection in my brain of, wait a minute, is this the next punishment? And by the way, not that being gay is a punishment, but from the lens of OCD and religious scrupulosity, I viewed this kind of feeling of anxiety as punishment, whatever it attached to. And so that one was the one that took me down. And it's interesting. That was at 14. And I lived with it for 6 years, again, not telling a soul, putting on this facade. I put the mask on. I was, a straight A student, an athlete. I was very popular among my peers, everything I wanted the world to see me as. Yet, as we all know, inside I was just broken and thought I was this horrible human. I'm punished, I'm getting punished by God. And yet I'm showing the world that I'm this great Christian, and in and out of depression, which of course I didn't know was depression. And then at some point around age 15 or 16, I just thought to myself, if it ever gets so bad, because it would come in waves, it would be like 3 or 4 weeks and then it would break and I would be okay. And then it would come again. And I told myself, if it ever gets to a point that it doesn't go away, I can just kill myself. And really, this was a matter-of-fact conversation I had with myself of like, okay, well, at least we have a plan. And this is what I do when I'm supporting people, doing peer support, is suicidal ideation is part of OCD. And people get very scared of it and then they develop suicide OCD, but it is your brain just saying, if the suffering gets too big, there is an option. Yes. And
it's
so
horrible.
It is, but it gave me relief.
It provides a sense of relief. Yes, exactly what you just said. And you're like, well, I guess it would just be quiet. It would just be silence for me, or whatever is meant for me after this. Maybe I can just go there because this sucks. This is painful. And why am I feeling this? And why do I look around and no one else feels this? Why am I the one that's chosen to feel all this shit? And that's what people don't understand is you can mask the hell out of that thing. You can walk through life and be the popular one that's, dressed cute, and you go home and you just break down because you have been hiding all this. And I'm working on the peer OCD. Will you explain to listeners a little bit about what that is exactly? Because I just turned 41 and I didn't get diagnosed with OCD until I was 40. So I have lived my entire life with the mental compulsions, and I want to hear a little bit about, explain to listeners what pure OCD is. And by the way, I love your Instagram and you are pure Chrissie.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, you do a really, really beautiful job at articulating how we all feel. I want to applaud you for that because I have cried over your reels, and I'll share later a little bit about the travel one that it was so spot on that I didn't actually understand that was my OCD until your reel. So your work is impacting lives, and I am one of them. So again, the pure OCD is, I'll let you take it from here.
Yes. And thank you. And I'll definitely get into later how I started to do some of this work and why it is so important to me to really represent the authentic experience of OCD versus the glossed over. And then you get treatment and life is great. No, it's not. Let's just all be real. But life is not great for everybody. So, we all have ups and downs. It's just, anyway, I'll get into that. But okay. So pure OCD it's a term that was coined by Dr. Stephen Phillipson in the late 90s. So Phillipson, I don't know if y'all know who he is, but he was my therapist. I found him over AOL dial-up. And we did phone sessions doing ERP. And so all I knew was this man came over the phone every week and told me to do these torturous things. And I eventually got better. But so he coined the term pure OCD, as a way of bringing a community of people together who had intrusive thoughts. I like to call them intrusions, because there's so many things other than just thoughts. The intrusions with mental rituals, meaning they're basically not visible to the naked eye. When you have OCD and you learn more about it and you go through exposure response prevention, you can start to see the compulsions. Obviously, avoidance is more of an outward behavioral compulsion, but sometimes even you're the only one that knows that you're doing that, or there's checking, things like that. But we tend to, as members of that community named Pure OCD, we tend to hide the compulsions from other people. So the big thing about how this community name really impacted me was when I was diagnosed with OCD, I was actually in a locked hospital after a suicide attempt. And I thought, okay, I have OCD. I don't think so. I think they got it wrong. But the Prozac was working, so who cares? I was like, okay, I'm flying high, except for I can't have an orgasm, but who cares at that point? And so,
are you crazy in orgasm meeting, or are you?
So I was like, give me the meds all the way, baby. So I stayed on the meds. And then when I went off the meds, of course, all the symptoms came back. I was suicidal again. And then when I found Phillipson's website and he described this pure OCD and all of the things that go along with it, I finally could accept this is a real diagnosis. I am not alone. I did not identify with contamination. I did not identify with organization. And so to me, I still thought I was alone until I found that community. And so really, it's important to know it's not an actual diagnosis. It's a community name for individuals with intrusions and mental rituals as a way to let you know you're not alone. And that because as we know, the taboo, especially intrusive thoughts, the shame is so high. And when the shame is so high, the insight is so low. And so people really walk around on this earth believing they're the only one, believing this cannot be OCD, I am the exception. And that's what that community and the community name helps provide people, is that sense of belonging.
It's so important to have that, of course. I wanted to go back to your obsession with potentially being gay. We haven't talked about this yet on the podcast, Alicia, but I experienced some of that as a kid.
Me too.
In my teen years, I had
Look at us.
I had this worry that I might be gay. I also grew up in the era where you could have been ostracized for that. Of course, there are still some communities now where that can happen. And so to me, that was one of the worst possible things that could happen to me. Again, noting that that is not the case, of course. What I would do is I would test it. And of course, that was part of checking or a compulsion, is I would imagine gay sex and then test that I wasn't aroused by it. Then I would imagine straight sex and think of women. And of course, as a straight person, that did arouse me. And so I would go, okay, not gay. Excellent. And then 5 minutes later, the thought would pour back in, oh, well, what if you're just somehow masking it? So I'm curious how that showed up for you, especially given that you grew up in a religious setting where that must have added such a layer of complexity to navigating that.
Thank you for that question. The interesting thing is, in reflection, and I am not experiencing any denial whatsoever. In reflection, I do think having OCD lends so much empathy. Our worldviews shatter the moment that OCD starts. I feel like, and I see
agree.
that in a lot of my clients. When you really do live at the level of undeniable, persistent suffering every day, all day, you see the world differently. You see different nuances of things, prejudice, this or this or this. And you just have this empathy for the idea that anyone is going to suffer. And so I feel like having OCD for the years that I did, and then developing sexual orientation OCD, yes, in my culture, and it's important to note that it was a cultural thing. Being gay was seen as wrong, not only from a Southern perspective back then, but also a religious culture. And I did not believe it was wrong. And I always reflect and think, are you sure you didn't? And you're just thinking that now because obviously I have different views. But no, I remember specifically thinking at that point, San Francisco is the big gay place. It just was. Mm-hmm. And so I remember thinking as a 14, 15-year-old, if I was gay, because I knew I wasn't, I'll just graduate and move to San Francisco and probably become a gay activist. So I remember thinking, I don't care. And in fact, I felt I was almost like had radar out for people that may be gay in my high school, not because I knew what it was like to be gay, but I felt like I did know what it was like to be hiding something and to be suffering and having to put on this persona. So I really do believe there was this acceptance of, okay, if I'm a lesbian, I am a lesbian, like, let's go.
Yeah, I'm accepting this. Like, enough with the mental torture, with the back and forth. Like, if I am, and let's go.
But I think, and to your point, Liam, it was less about that and more about the loss of what I thought I was going to have or who I was. I think sexual orientation, OCD in particular, really breaks that sense of self. It is this, but I know what I want. I know what I desire. Why can't I just accept that? And it's okay. I'm questioning, but I still know, okay, maybe I'm, in that phase where everybody, but no, I really do know. So the fact that you, just like you said, you test and check, and then it comes right back, your sense of self is going to be destroyed. I cannot trust myself. I don't know who I am. People with OCD tend to talk about the second self, which of course we know is OCD is ego dystonic, and that's why. But even I feel like I can't speak for everybody, but even the recovery after effective treatment, it has taken me decades, and I am not joking, decades to get that trust back that I know who Chrissie is, that I can, and not necessarily about sexual orientation, but that I just have self-trust, because to live for that long, especially in the developmental years of emotional intelligence and your sense of self, I had none. OCD completely destroyed that. So then to move into an adulthood and be like, oh, look, I'm cured, which we know you're not cured, but I thought that, and then be like, okay, let's go have sex. Let's go do this. And I still couldn't trust my senses. I couldn't trust my feelings. Arousal nonconcordance fucked my whole world. I mean, to have the groinal, to use men I wasn't like hurting people or, all that, but to use men in a way of, okay, I'm going to go make out and see if I feel butterflies. And if I don't feel butterflies with someone, I need to dump them and find someone I do, because that was the only time I really knew, when I had that euphoria of a new relationship or the excitement. I think back on the testing and the checking and the testing and the checking, and just how much it damaged my ability now to even be vulnerable with intimacy and sex, or even just an individual, without thinking, is it going to flip on its head? How can I trust that I really feel this way? I mean, combined with like a lot of us have childhood stuff as well.
What's interesting about that is you had this experience where you couldn't trust yourself. And I think that is such a feature of OCD, not being able to trust your experience of something, not being able to trust your own joy. And I think at one point you talked about how you feel OCD robbed you of your childhood and your adolescence. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I think that too is such a unique experience with OCD that you look back on your life and go, I missed all of it.
Yes. And there's such a source of grief to that. I think that people often don't identify and allow themselves the permission to grieve it. A lot of times with OCD, there is this, okay, I need to get better and move on with life, like I said earlier, and then life will be great. And that's why I was saying life isn't great, because having OCD can be traumatic. And so exactly what you're saying, when I reflect on my childhood in combination of OCD and some childhood neglect, emotional neglect that I experienced growing up in my household, I was just surviving. And often I think I probably would think to myself, if only I could go back when I didn't have OCD, well, that would be 7. I don't want to go back to age 7. But the desire is I would like to live a life without suffering. And when I reflect back, I have known nothing but suffering from age 8 on. We talk, when you get together with your buddies or you're talking about, I remember this in high school. You remember when we did this, you remember that prom, I remember this great time, even in college, remember this track meet we had or whatever. And I reflect and go, yes, I remember being up until 4 a.m., worrying I was going to throw up. Yes, I remember being on the bus, to the cross country meet and having groinals the entire time. It's a different, where everybody else had this. I don't want to say everybody else, because not everybody has a normal upbringing, but the way that you think about the progression of childhood into adolescence into your adulthood, the way that OCD disrupts those memories, it disrupts the experience. And then to get better, if you get better and you get treatment, I'm just going to say, if you're lucky enough to have access to treatment and be able to afford it and get better, then it is this, okay, I'm going to move on with life, but do we really even know how to move on with life?
Yeah.
What is normal? If for us, it has just been surviving. I mean, I really feel like I just survived my childhood and teenage years.
Yeah. And your childhood is so many of the experiences that we have shape our character. And if you're not having those experiences as a child and you're living in the moment and doing the things, who are you at 21 and 22 when you're diagnosed with OCD? I've asked myself that so many times. I'm like, who am I outside of the worry, outside of my head? Who am I? And it's like, I'll get glimpses of it. And it's when I'm really calm and present doing the work. And I'm like, more of that, more of that, more of her, more of her. And it's like, I don't think people truly understand the layers and depths that our mind goes. You're doing a very good job at explaining that to people. So thank you. And I'm sorry that you've spent your childhood in pain. Okay, tiny break. We want to shout out the sponsors supporting the show today.
The same distressing, unwanted thoughts keep playing over and over in your mind. The same rituals keep eating up your time, holding you back from enjoying your life. You've tried talk therapy before and spent session after session diving into those thoughts, trying to understand them, trying to fix them, but somehow they just get worse. And the shame piles on because you think, why isn't this working? What's wrong with me? If this sounds familiar, here's what you need to know. You are not the problem. You're experiencing something that a lot of people with OCD experience. Getting your life back is possible because OCD is highly treatable. It just requires a completely different approach than other mental health conditions. In fact, standard talk therapy often makes OCD worse because it encourages you to analyze those intrusive thoughts or try to replace them with positive ones. But with OCD, the more attention you give the thoughts, the stickier they become. That's where no CD comes in. NoCD provides virtual therapy designed specifically for OCD. Every single one of their therapists is extensively trained in a type of therapy called ERP, or exposure and response prevention, which is the most effective treatment available for OCD. And they get their training from world-renowned OCD experts, so they truly understand what you're dealing with, even the stuff that feels impossible to say out loud. In live, face-to-face virtual sessions, your NoCD therapist will teach you how to take the power away from intrusive thoughts so you can live the life you want to live. In between sessions, you'll be able to message your therapist anytime, join dozens of live support groups, and continue your progress with other expert-developed therapy tools. NoCD is also covered by insurance for over 138 million Americans, and their team makes it really simple to get started. Visit nocd.com and book a free 15-minute call. That's nocd.com to learn more and talk to someone who can help, because you deserve treatment that actually works for OCD. And now, back to our show.
I know you've spoken openly about attempting suicide. Is that something you're comfortable talking about with us? Because I
yeah.
recently shared a little bit of where my head went on an episode with my husband. It got very dark for you. At what point did that happen? And what was happening in your life at that time?
And thank you for asking. And I'm an open book. I mean, I wrote a book about my entire experience, so it's all out there. And I don't mind sharing anything. My story is a way for other people to connect and feel less shame. So I'm open about almost everything, probably everything, to a detriment sometimes. So I lived with sexual orientation OCD, started when I was 14. And so it was 6 years. And again, I had made this pact with myself. I call it the suicide pact. It was, if it gets too intense, I will just kill myself. Now, I was terrified of that. I was terrified to die. And in a lot of ways, which I think suicidal ideation represents for people, is that we don't really want to die. We just want to stop the suffering. And when we don't know how to stop the suffering, that becomes an option. And I was 19, I think, when I experienced a tragic loss. My cousin, who was one of my best friends, drowned. And I now know as an adult, from growing up kind of in a situation with emotional neglect, I did not know how to express or experience grief at all. And so grief tends to be when OCD comes in, swoops in and says, oh, you need to grieve? Well, never mind, you're a pedophile, or whatever it's going to take me to try to have me escape from whatever the big emotions are. And so when John died, my cousin, there was this slow spiraling down, of course, that, no one recognized because of the persona that I put on. I was in college at the time, and it was about a 6-month period. I knew it was happening. And so the increase in physical symptoms also increased the shame and the guilt of lying to everybody, about who I really am. And so then my insight was so low at that point. And so that, of course, is when the depression became really high, and I was back in school. This was about 6 months later. It was nearing the end of fall semester. And I remember thinking to myself, this is it. This is the time. It's not going away. Now, I did not make the connection between the grief and, holding up a major mental illness. I didn't know I had a mental illness. I thought this was just God punishing me. So this is when it kind of like blurs over into some almost psychotic thinking, although I did not experience true psychosis. But I really became so entrenched in the magical thinking piece of religious scrupulosity. So God send me a sign, I'm looking for signs everywhere. Should I kill myself? Should I not? Because this is the ultimate sin, killing yourself. So I had so much pressure on me about what was going on in my head and whether I was being punished. And now I'm contemplating this horrible sin that's unforgivable. But to me, it would have been a reprieve to just be able to get some relief. So I went home from school. Okay, I'll share the story. Oh my God, you're going to die. So I was going home, and the day before, I was so depressed. And actually, some of my sorority sisters asked a few times because my hygiene was was going, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't going out. My grades fell, all that. And they were like, are you okay? I didn't have the words to say, I'm not okay. I'm contemplating suicide, which I think is why it's so important to always talk about suicide and suicidal ideation. So people have the words to know how to ask or to express it without feeling so much shame. So I knew I was suicidal, wouldn't admit it. I remember leaving the sorority house thinking I will never see these people again because I'm going to have to kill myself. And then thinking, wait a minute, what if I ask God for one more sign? So this is where it blurs into a little psychotic stuff, or just delusional thinking, not psychosis. But I said, God, if God get in 24 hours, give me a sign, on whether or not these intrusions are real, and because if they are or aren't, whatever, I'm gonna have to kill myself. And so if you want me to kill myself, then give me a sign. I mean, this is like with magical thinking, this is the worst thing you could ever do. And so I go home. Okay, it's 1997 or something, and I get home and my mom's cooking food, and she said, "Come on in, I'm so depressed," and trying to mask it. And I sit down. And she hands me the food and she said, let's watch 2020. So she turns 2020 on, and y'all, I'm not joking. It was like, tonight, the expose on lesbians in their 50s and how they left their husband in their midlife because they were lesbian. Y'all.
No.
The gut bomb. That like narrowing out. All of a sudden the world is this is myopic view. I'm in a hole. You're in the haze. I can't hear anything going on. My mom's just like, over there, like, lesbians are going to hell. Who knows what she was saying? Like, she was over there like talking and everything else. And I'm just sitting here like, that's the sign. And I look back on that moment. I would give anything to go back and just hold me.
Oh, right.
Because that was the rock bottom of like the darkest place I'd ever been in. Because at that point, because of my belief system then, now God had abandoned me. And if God was going to abandon me because of all this, then everybody would if I told them. So I've never felt so alone in my life. And then from that moment on, about 3 or 4 days, and I spiraled down so low, and then eventually attempted. It's pretty gruesome. It was a knife wound and a hypothermia, and I was lucky enough to have that moment of insight probably pretty soon before I was going to become unconscious, and crawled out from where I was. And ended up coming to these people's house at like 4 a.m. And I know I'm sorry. It's a bit gruesome, but it's important for people to hear. I think the way that we think about dying by suicide is very personal. And I did believe that OCD makes you believe you're a horrible human, and, that a horrible human should die a horrible death. And so it was just in my thought process, that was as alone as I felt and abandoned as I felt like that was the way to go. But like I said, in the middle of it, that insight piece. And I also want to tell people, as low as it can get, don't ever give up on insight, because it is that moment of clarity can save our lives. That moment of, oh my gosh, maybe I can ask for help. And at that point, I had no choice but to ask for help, because I was wounded and I was I was near death. And so to be able to go to someone and then wrap me in a blanket and say, we're going to get you to help. I think my story is a testament that no matter how bad it gets from a suicidal standpoint, you can always ask for help. And then, just to kind of complete the story, I did end up having to have emergency surgery. The doctor was so kind. When I told him what was going on, he was reassuring, and not the OCD way, but just this, you are not a bad person. The nurses were so kind. which they aren't always when it comes to suicide. And then I was transported to a locked facility, which was terrifying. But I was lucky that I was diagnosed in this random locked facility in Atlanta. They put the pieces together and said, "We think this is OCD." And that was a relief.
Thank you for sharing that. It is tough to hear. And I'm sure listeners, you're probably a mess like I am right now. And I think it's, like you said, it's really, really important to share those, because that is where it goes for a lot of people. And thank God you're here today. I am so happy to be sitting here talking to you. And the strength that you have is really inspiring and powerful. So you're doing a good thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
When you get to the hospital and then you're eventually brought to an inpatient facility, you had struggled so much to open up, to your family, to your friends. Was it just that this experience was so intense that you finally said, okay, I got to just open up and let the floodgates open?
How do I say this? It was an odd reaction from my family. Now I also want to give them the benefit of the doubt. If, you pick your daughter up from some stranger's house at 4 a.m. after a massive suicide attempt, they're probably terrified. And there was a moment in the car. My dad is driving around with me in the car while around the neighborhood, trying to, I guess, piece together in his own mind what was going on. And I do remember just saying, I worry all day, every day that I'm going to throw up, that I'm gay and I'm being punished by God. I mean, I can't imagine how that came across, but I was terrified to say it out loud. As an adult, after processing all this, my dad's reaction was really terse. It was, and again, I just want to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. I know that he was really scared, and I know that there were probably a lot of things going on in his mind. My daughter has just attempted suicide. Maybe how is that going to reflect on us? How is that going to reflect on being the minister? I don't know. This is a conversation I've never had with my father, but, he drove me down to Atlanta. So that was strange. Considering I was pretty ill at that point, and in danger, waited in the waiting room. And then my mom's reaction was pretty, stigmatizing too. Her first reaction was she was crying. "Do you really think you're gay?" And I was like, I don't think that's the issue.
Wow.
We've got bigger problems than this right now. So so again, remember how I said when I first started telling my story, I knew if I were to bring this to my parents, that the reaction would not have been what I needed it to be. So this absolutely just displayed that. And so I am really proud of my 8-year-old self for having that intuition. Despite what I endured. But yeah, so then going into the hospital's terrifying.
Can I interrupt
Yes.
you really fast? Because you just said something that you were proud of the 8-year-old. I struggle with this idea that even still, at the cost of our own feelings and life, quite frankly, we are so concerned about what other people are going to think. Protecting our parents and what their views may or may not be from the public at the cost of our own life. That is a problem. Had we had the courage as young people to say, you know what, Mom and Dad, this may jeopardize or taint your reputation, but I am struggling. I am your child. Like, I do it still. There's so many things about my parents that was really fucked up, and I still protect them. I don't have a conversation with my father, and I still don't want to hurt him and how people portray him. It's like, it just goes to show that we have put other people and the way that we think we're being perceived in front of our own well-being. And who knows, maybe your mom and dad were struggling with their own shit. I don't know. I felt the need, whether we cut that out or not, I felt the need to emphasize, you guys, that we have to pull the curtain back. We have to pull, there is no more to hide. We should not be afraid to tell our own parents. And it's like that little girl, I want to go tell her, like, it's okay. It's okay to share. These are the people we are supposed to trust most in life. And we are still worried about protecting who thinks about them, what strangers think about them. Your mom is in the waiting room, and I'm sorry, Mom, if you're listening, you're in the waiting room concerned after your daughter almost took her life if she might be gay. That is mind-blowing.
Well, it makes to me, it makes sense why I would develop that theme in the first place.
Right.
Why there would be fears around it.
Right. And look, like, that is the generation that they grew up in. I get it. My parents were the same. Everything was kept secret. I'm so over it. I'm so over the mask that we all put on to function in society, and no one knows right from wrong. We don't know what the fuck is going on. Everybody's out here going, I should be more like this. Be more like what? They don't even know what they should be like. And I'm sorry. I just got so emotionally invested in that.
Well, I also think that the change comes from this. The change comes from us speaking out, by us sharing the stories and shattering the shame around it. And like, to me, what I do now, and a lot of it is really extreme. If you see my YouTube channel, some of the shit that I talk about, which is important, these deep, dark experiences that people have that no one would ever say in public. I'm willing to say it on YouTube. To me, that is me defending the 8-year-old. I'm not going to silence her anymore. Whether my parents like it or don't, I give zero shits. I mean, I do not defend my parents. I do like to give room for I don't know what they were going through. Like you said, I don't know what their experience was. But as far as I'm concerned, they aren't allowed in my life anymore. And a lot of it is because I can come out and talk to them now, and I still get the response that I would get at 8. That's not on me. That's not on me. That's on them.
Right.
And their
inability. And we know that now as adults. You don't know that as a child. You don't know how to, you don't know anything from it.
And I think to your point, this is where OCD is so sinister, is yes, I would love for kids and teens and even people in their 20s to be able to go to their parents and say, I am suffering and I don't care what you're going through. But the childhood almost lends to the inability to do that, number one, for a lot of people. Not everybody. We don't have any data about nurture, but we all know it's part of it. That's anecdotal. But the second thing is OCD making us such massive people pleasers. And a lot of that has to do with the self-trust and the ego dystonic nature. If I can't trust myself, then how can I trust my feelings about my parents? How can I trust my feelings about my childhood?
Right.
And then also John Hirschfield just came into my community a few weeks ago, and we were talking about self-trust, and he says the remedy to self-trust is self-compassion. And I was like, whoa, like, back it up. And he said, if you aren't given compassion, you don't know how to give yourself compassion, and therefore you don't know how to self-trust. And I was like, mind blown.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God. So if we look at this from a childhood perspective, and I asked him directly, because I wanted to get it on recording so I could re-listen. I said, okay, so does this have to do with us not receiving compassion in perhaps our childhood? And he said, yes. He said it could be childhood, it could be culture, it could be some sort of events that have happened. And so to me, it was eye-opening, but it goes directly to your point, Alicia. Like, if we aren't given compassion, if we can't develop normal self-trust, being able to validate our own emotions, how are we going to go to our parents if they are the ones that continue to invalidate us?
I mean, they're characters in the story that we're building, right? I didn't have that safe place. my parents quickly became the enemies in my story, and I didn't trust them. I didn't trust anything that went on around me. I lost trust in people.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. That dynamic makes perfect sense. Chrissie, you've mentioned, your community a few times. Tell us a little bit about OCD Gamechangers and what the mission of that is.
So I have like an overarching community, and then I have little pockets of community. So my big thing is, how many people in this world can I reach and let them know that they're not a monster? I mean, I don't care how I have to do it, what we have to do, how much money I have to spend, what I have to do. That's the whole goals. I'm all about the lived experience. So I became a peer support specialist after my big relapse. In my 30s, I had a relapse from harm OCD. And that's when I really realized this is not going away. I was very much like a lot of people. After you got treatment, I went into denial. I thought I was cured, whatever. And then when it hit again,
you even have OCD after you've already been told and gone through hell.
Yes.
Your OCD questions your own OCD. I went through that with Liam for a while right after I found out. I was like, am I just lying to everybody? Is everything I'm saying?
Yes.
And I would have to get the reassurance from him. I'm like, Liam, there's no way I know this much about OCD in my own experience if I don't have it, right? He's like, you 100% have OCD. I mean, the mind is
Meta
so
OCD
like that. It's wild how much it questions everything. Meta OCD.
Well,
Yeah.
and then and to get a different theme. So harm OCD was a whole different ballgame for me. All of a sudden, I'm having urges, and I'm all this stuff. I'm like, bring back the groinals, people. At least then I know. And so
at least those felt good.
when I developed harm OCD, and then I realized it and worked through it again, that's when I knew, Chrissie, this is a lifelong disorder. And that was when kind of my purpose surfaced at that point. I was just ready. I want to find other people. I know they're out there. How do I do it? So I started a YouTube channel. I became a certified peer support specialist. I wanted to ethically support people in a way of getting supervision and understanding how to support and give ethical support. So I started doing that. And then from there, it's been about 12 years since that. I just have continually sought ways, because from there, it was me giving support, which of course is healing. It's symbiotic. When you hear other people's stories, it helps you as well. But then it became, a few years later, oh my God, I've got to get this person over here with POCD to meet this person over here with POCD, but HIPAA's in my way. So how do I do that? So then I started groups. So I run groups of people up for all over the world. Then it became, well, these people are in the groups, but I really want them to be able to talk, but outside of groups, but they can't because of HIPAA. So then I created an online community. So it's like an app. So people can go in, we run events. I have peer sports that work for me in the community. They can talk to each other. I should have y'all come in at some point and do a Q&A, promote your podcast. Yeah. And so that started. And then in the midst of all that, I was like, why not start a nonprofit too? I mean, come on, Chrissie. So I started the nonprofit OCD Gamechangers because I was very lonely in my advocacy around 2018. I mean, advocacy is hard especially when you're putting content about groinals out there. You're getting shit from the internet all the time about it. So I pulled together like Stuart Ralph and Aaron Harvey of Made of Millions, Stephen Smith and OCD, brought them all out to Colorado. We did this weekend mastermind to offset the cost of the Airbnb. I was like, let's just do an event. We'll just share our stories. And it was magical. And so that's where Gamechangers was born. And it has since morphed to COVID changed us a little bit because they were getting a bit bigger, but I realized that was the wrong formula. The right formula is an event with 50 people or less in a very quirky, cozy kind of venue for lived experience speakers that can get really raw. And then at the end, Duke Al-Durham, who you had on your podcast, he runs an open mic for the people that have been inspired by the lived experience speakers. And my role is to weave together through all the speakers a theme for the event, and that all depends. Like, are we talking about, grief? Are we talking about relapse? Are we talking about rock bottom? And they are phenomenal. So I also thought, I'm so tired of all this shit happening in the States, and international people are just really craving. So I was like, we're going international. So we started in the UK, and then we went to Spain, and then we've been to Germany, and then we've been to Ireland. And so now we go all over the world and we do these events. And we're just lucky to have people that have helped fund them. We're an all volunteer board. None of us get paid. Most of us have to pay for our way and everything, but that doesn't matter. We're just lucky that we have people that donate and sponsor this. And to me, to kind of wrap it all up, there is nothing bigger in my world than connection. There's nothing more healing than community. We walk around when we're having thoughts about, am I a murderer? Am I a pedophile? Do I want to engage in necrophilia? Whatever the hell, happens to us. We walk around and we just think we're alone. We just think we are the exception. Nobody gets us. I don't deserve happiness. And when you sit and listen to other people's stories, and it is so everything, our brains are like the same. We have the same thoughts. We have the same doubts. We have the same thoughts about lying, about OCD, all of that. You all of a sudden and developing self or compassion for other people, then it transfers to yourself. And there's nothing that any of us deserve more than self-compassion for what we've been through. So I live this charmed life after the shit I went through to be able to watch these things, watch people heal. And I get to be part of it.
And they are so lucky to connect with you. What an amazing thing that you've accomplished. How can people donate, for one? What's the name of the app? And how long is the event? That's what I gathered through that. I had to get it out quick.
So to donate to OCD Gamechangers, and just so everyone knows, every penny goes towards these events. Every penny. This coming year, we're going to Spain in May. We're going to Poland. We're going to South Ireland, and then probably 2 different states. So anything that you donate will go directly to these events. You go to OCDGamechangers.com and donate there. My online support community is kind of like an app through the Mighty Network. And when you get into the Mighty Network, go to the OCD support community. It's $35 a month. I priced it out as like a copay. And you get weekly support groups, weekly peer support events. I have psychoeducation classes. I do community times. We have people come in and talk. It's really cool. It's just, and it's there for you anytime. If you're having a hard time and you want to come in for a month or 2 and then leave, that's what we're there. We're that safety net for when you need other people who understand. Our events are about 3 to 4 hours. And so it's 4 different speakers and then the online mic at the very end. And so also, if you're listening and you're in a different state or a different country and you think, I want y'all to come here, contact me and we'll see if we can make it happen.
That is so cool. What an amazing way to take what can be so debilitating and turn it into something positive. What's something you wish people knew about OCD?
How much work do we have? What I wish that people knew is, and this continues, it continues to frustrate me from the level of people who are trying to be supportive, but they don't have OCD, which is why community is so important, because we just get it, y'all. You having OCD, if you could tell me right now, I'm worried that I murdered someone last night or something, I would know that right now you're having this conversation with me and you're going over in your brain right now whether or not you murdered someone and how you did it, and how you got away with it. You know what I mean? So what I wish people knew is that intrusions are not just, oh, I had this weird thought, ooh, but they are 24/7. When we're stuck in the haze, we have to learn how to function normally while hiding this and slapping a smile on our face so you don't have to know. And that's what I'm the most frustrated about, I think, is that, and it's not frustration to other people because they can't get it if they don't have OCD. But I wish I could bottle OCD up like in a Coke bottle and have people drink it and experience it for a day.
I had the same thought. I'm like,
can we talk to Coke? Can we talk to Coca-Cola?
Yeah, surely they can come up with
the intrusive thoughts edition.
Well, and it's not just, right? Like you said, it's not just the intrusive thought, but then it's like, not only does it interrogate you all day, but it also, then you go, well, am I masking it too much? Do I seem fake? Can people see? There's so much that goes on top of that one thought that you're now just like, I can't move. I don't want to do anything. I want to go away. I'm going to go hide in my room, just be alone. And then for me, isolation has been my thing.
I know.
I just cut everyone out. I'm like, as long as I don't exist, I don't want to exist in this world right now, in this life, because it's too much. What is a tool when you said, we know we can't cure it. You're still battling it. You've gotten a lot better at handling it when it comes up. What's your go-to tool these days?
My recovery is healing my whole person. I encourage my clients, I encourage everyone, do not stop with ERP. It's part of a bigger picture. There's a reason. There are reels in your head that you can undo, that you can see. There's a family system. There's a puzzle you can put together. And these are the ways of developing self-compassion. So I'm in therapy. I'm still in therapy. I'm in talk therapy. I've had trauma therapy. I'm going to go into, systems work. Keep working on yourself. Don't stop. It doesn't stop with behavioral therapy. It's like heart disease, right? Let's treat the symptoms of heart disease, but unless you figure out why you're getting heart disease, it's just going to persist and you're still going to suffer. So there's that. There's a tool that you will be able to access in 2026 that will help, and it is called the OCD Relapse Roadmap by Chrissie Hodges. It's a workbook. It's a relapse workbook. And so it's going to be published here in the next month or so. This is a comprehensive workbook that you can record all of your stuff when you are in OCD symptoms, when you're out of OCD symptoms, what's your go-to, who are your safe people, who aren't your safe people. That is going to be, and I wrote this book based on what I do when I'm experiencing OCD symptoms.
Why is that so important to record it?
Because we forget. Number one, that we have OCD when we're feeling good. So when it comes back, and it comes back in a different form, we can go weeks and months ruminating. And then when we do realize it's OCD, we can go, oh, but it's not OCD this time. So if it's in your own words, this is what it feels like. This is what my body does. This is what my jaw does. This is where my thoughts go. I go to Google. I go to pornography to check. Whatever you do, you can see, oh my God, I did do this before, so maybe it is OCD. So that way, then in one section, what do I do next? Here's the support group I reach out to. Here's the peer support. Here's the therapist. Here's who I can talk to. Here's who I can't talk to. If you're in crisis, here's the hospital to go to. Here's the one not to go to. Things like that. So you have a roadmap when you are in the haze and you need someone to guide you, and there's no better person to guide you than your past self.
And that's so true that we forget. And, you get lost in the day to day and taking care of your kids or your work or whatever. And life is going well. And so you don't really feel you need to do maintenance. I was just telling Alicia before we started that I'm going to start back up with talk therapy because I think I've been out of it for too long, and there's been stuff that's been creeping in that I've been able to kind of just brush off. And I think my resolution for 2026 is stop brushing that off, do the work, stay on top of it, and it'll pay dividends down the line when you come upon that next phase.
And Leah, I mean, you're no different than anybody else. It's this, there's so much fear around all this that if I'm not experiencing OCD, I don't want to think about OCD, because what if thinking about OCD brings OCD back on and it ruins this great time I've been having, while you're slowly descending into rock bottom and you don't know it. So lots of people feel that way. And the point of the workbook and the point of that continual maintenance is just what exposure does. When you do exposure response prevention, people are sometimes shocked that when I'm facing this fear, the fear actually isn't as bad as I thought, right? That's the whole point of ERP.
Right.
And the whole point of maintenance and remembering your story and being able to identify with that is to remember that you can self-trust, that you do have tools, because when you distance yourself from that for good reason, denial is there for a reason. It's part of grief. But when you distance yourself, it's going to be that much harder when it does come back for you to be like, oh shit, is this OCD or is it not? And maybe it's not. And then it takes you longer to motivate to actually do the work to get better. But what you're doing is so normal. And I always encourage people, if you need to be in denial, go be in denial, but keep a hold of the things that did help you get better, because you're going to need them again at some point. And then they're like, no, I don't, I'm cured. And I'm like, yeah, see you in a year. And I usually do.
Exactly. When Alicia asked you what tools you use, I was going to say, I think, don't you use lesbian sex to?
She's like, well, I have this new vibrator called the. that's one tool I use.
I got the sense it would be okay to tell that joke.
You can say whatever you want, Liam. It's your podcast.
Every time I do a podcast with Phillipson, he always brings up, well, Chrissie may be a lesbian. I'm always like, you were my former therapist. I'm not sure it's okay for you to say that. I'm like, get that. But it's totally a joke. I don't even care anymore.
Chrissie, it was such a pleasure. Thank you for being so open with us. I know our listeners are going to resonate, and I just appreciate what you're doing. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for having me. I would love to have the two of you come into my community at some point. And I really want to keep in touch. And I just want to say thank you for providing a platform. The more platforms than we have, the more people we're going to reach and the more lives we're going to save. And that's all that matters, is people connecting to other people to know that they don't have to walk around alone with this and in that horrible shame that we all carry with us. So thank you.
As you say, community is everything. Chrissie, thank you so much. And you can find her at OCDGamechangers.com or just follow her on Instagram. We'll make sure we link to all of that in the podcast description. Do you have a New Year's resolution?
I always try to better myself a little bit each year, right? With things that I know bring out the best sides of me. And I think one of the things that I used to do was get up super early. It's just the best for me, for my mental health, my physical well-being. And I hadn't been doing that for the better half of the end of the year. So this morning I got up. I was the only one in a workout class at 5 a.m.
5 a.m.?
Yeah, that's my sweet spot. Like, I go to bed early. I go to bed early. That's just what I've learned works for me. Right after I put the kids down, I jump in bed. I may or may not watch a show or read a book. If I read a book, I put myself to sleep in a hurry. So I get up at like 4:40 and run out the door. This morning I was the only one. What day are we in? January 2nd? And I'm the only one in this workout class. So I ended up being a private session with this trainer. But yeah, that's really what I want to focus on. I want to focus on being more present, getting up early, doing the hard things in the moment that will leave a lasting result.
Oh my God, you guys are like 85-year-olds.
I know, it's glorious.
My resolution is to sign up for an OCD.
Liam, I've never been in therapy for OCD.
I know. You need to be. Like, it needs to be a specific OCD therapy. So I really want someone that is specialized in it. And I'm in a good place, but I feel like I need maintenance. There's definitely still some fine tuning that I could do. And I want to see
for sure
whether or not an OCD makes sense for that.
This could change everything for us.